Good morning and welcome to Wisdom of the Soul. And this is really sort of a new chapter for this class. We started with some basic esoteric philosophy almost a year ago. And while we've touched on personal development, basic meditation, and where to begin, addressing stress and anxiety and understanding what fear is as confusion and uncertainty, but really rarely a signal of any sort of danger or threat. And then we were really deeply into the mystical and the esoteric. The last couple of classes, we did a metaphysical interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And then last week, the Eightfold Noble Path of Buddhism. And I loved all of that. But it feels to me like it's time in this new year, as we approach the 1-year mark of this class, to go back to basics and cover the basics of personal development in a way that we've yet to do, actually. I said in the newsletter that it's a fair question to ask ourselves, why would we want to develop a personality or a sense of individuality if our goal ultimately is to transcend that ego nature, that false self, that identity as a separate being? And again, I think it's a great question and deserves to be addressed. And the reason is that it's an education, that we have to know our basic arithmetic before we can do algebra. And only then can we move on to, calculus or trigonometry or geometry or whatever. So there's an order to it. It's like climbing a ladder one rung at a time. And I see in the community of spiritual aspirants a lot of people that want to sidestep all of that material. We understandably would rather not address our own dragons or our own demons. And we want to, many of us, seek spiritual unfoldment or the development of consciousness in order to sidestep all of that. But we really can't. I've been really concerned recently in reflecting on the sudden awareness of artificial intelligence. It's like all of a sudden in just the last few weeks, everybody is talking about AI. The reason it concerns me is that this open AI or chat GBT, I think it's called, is so good. And I've played around with it myself. I asked some very deep metaphysical questions on OpenAI, and the answers I got back instantaneously were quite profound and deep and very well written. The problem is it all comes from information on the internet, half of which is wrong. And so I'm concerned about dark AI. We're already in a situation as a result of our politics in the last 7 years where it's increasingly difficult for people to know the truth. And philosophy is, if nothing else, the search for truth. People even don't know, they either don't know how to discern truth, or in many cases are not even interested. They just don't care. They want their version of the truth to be a reinforcement of what they believe. 15 years ago or so, Stephen Colbert, on his old show, coined the term truthiness. And truthiness is defined as, I know it's true because I feel like it should be, or I feel like it ought to be. Truth based on feelings is true for you if you take responsibility for your emotions, but you can't use your emotions, that subjective intelligence, to understand objective truth, much less absolute truth, the truth of the world, the truth of reality. There are relative truths, but there also are absolute truths. And dark AI, as I call it, deep fake videos. Remember the concern 20 years ago about Photoshop. Anything can be done now with CGI, with deepfake videos, and now with artificial intelligence, is going to be increasingly difficult to know the truth. And so the reason today I want to do a class on meditation, on visualization, guided imagery, and insight meditation, is to develop our intuition so that as a supplement to logic, I'd like you guys to check your microphones. We have a lot of external, somebody's mic is open. If you guys would check and mute. We want to develop our intuition as a supplement to logic. We don't want to elevate intuition as superior to logic, but we also do not want to abandon logic as we become more faithful. That's the way it would be said in a religious context. And you do see people abandoning their logic and ability to analyze and be reasonable in favor of faith. So it would be an error to be out of balance in either regard. Most people, common sense is not so common. I don't know what to say about most people. I think we're all lacking in logic, but the vast majority of people have never developed their intuition. So we're in deep trouble, I think, when it comes to moving forward into 2023 and the next decade. As AI comes online, there are already books published that have been written entirely by AI. And the open AI people are saying, well, we're working on an algorithm or a watermark of sorts to help you discern what is AI and what is not artificial intelligence. Nevertheless, it concerns me because there are people many people who are just not aligned with their values and are devoted to materialism, to money, power, greed, and will say and do just about anything to garner that money and that power, regardless of the consequences. And they will have equal access to AI. In fact, the deeply moneyed people will have more access to it than the rest of us. But within the next couple of months, it's going to be built into word processors. Microsoft Word will have, Microsoft has already said, they're going to integrate it with word processing, with Microsoft Word. So we'll all have access to it. And again, because it pulls on the internet, there's no way of knowing it's true. Enough. I don't want to overstate my case, but it is a strong concern that I have. It's of greater concern to me than politics, I'll tell you that. And I heard someone say the other day that we all thought cryptocurrency was going to be the next thing. Obviously, it's not. It's collapsing, thank God. But this is the next thing, artificial intelligence, and it will be used maliciously, and we have to get smart. So in going back to basics today, and we'll start with our opening meditation here, the whole idea is to help us become better at pulling on intuition, which is really more than emotional intelligence. It's access to the oversoul, to the higher self. It's the wisdom of the soul. That's what intuition is. And it's not instinct. Instinct and intuition, as we've discussed before, are polarities. Instinct is more lower gut, base of the spine, first and second chakras, root and sacral. And it's really, oh no, it's an animal, fear-based, run away. Intuition is more heart-based. So it's like a bar magnet between the root and the heart. The intuition is the top of the bar magnet. That's the love-based, oh boy, what to move toward. And both are referred to as gut feelings, but intuition is really much more than a gut feeling. I think it's important for you to reflect on that too. So let's do our opening meditation, and then we'll launch into what is meditation? What is contemplation? What options do we have? How do we distinguish between basic vipassana, which is developing awareness, and those meditations that are about developing concentration, attaining an expanded awareness or a higher degree of consciousness, where reality just unfolds in front of you and you get these epiphanies, these revelations that you can then take to the world and compare and contrast with what you're being told by other people on the television and the internet. Okay. Hope you have some questions or comments about this at the end of today's class when we go to the Q&A. So with that, why don't you get comfortable and prepare to meditate. Sit up straight, but don't be rigid about it. Just sit up and put your shoulders back and center yourself. Close your eyes and begin by just feeling the chair supporting you. Just get a sense of being supported by the chair, reminding yourself that, and I often say this, but I think it's an important first step. You need not cooperate with the chair. Surrender to the chair. It's going to support you. It's not going to drop you any more than the floor will drop the chair. So feel a deep letting go right at the beginning. Trust the chair and relax. That's a letting go feeling from head to toe. Begin by taking 3 or 4 nice, slow, deep breaths, inhaling through your nose fully. Hold for just a beat at the peak, and exhale slowly, just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, beyond where you'd normally stop, all the way out. Wait a beat and repeat. Nice, big, slow, deep breath. And as you exhale, feel a letting go feeling. Put your burden down. A couple of more times. Slow it all down. You got lots of time to inhale. And then the exhale is a sigh of relief, a sigh of release. Feel the letting go. One more time. Slow it down. See how slow you can go. The same with the exhalation. Slowly, slowly releasing. Beyond where you'd normally stop. All the way out. And then just let go of that and allow your body to breathe itself all by itself. Just normal breathing. To deepen, put your awareness on the feet. And don't overdo it, but just tighten the feet a little bit. And then all at once let go. To familiarize yourself with how it feels. Same with the calves. Don't overdo it, but a little tighter, and all at once create and sense that letting go feeling. Just drop the tension. And then go back to the feet and see if you can't feel a little more letting go. Even if you think you may just be imagining it, that's the right feeling. And so too in the calves below the knees. Just create a little more softening. And in the upper legs and the front and the back, I think they're quads and hamstrings. Feel the letting go. In your buttocks. And then allow that letting go feeling to slowly float from the lower back and abdomen, moving upward. Feel the letting go in the middle back, in the tummy. And let it rise, that deep relaxation, into the upper back and the rib cage. Pause here and imagine all of the organs in the rib cage relaxing. The heart, the lungs, the gallbladder and spleen. No, I don't know where they are either. You just imagine all of that letting go. Liver and pancreas. As you let go, these organs do a better job, you see. They become more efficacious, more effective and efficient as you let go. Imagine arteries and veins and capillaries dilating just a little bit as you relax in the upper torso above your core. Imagining is the right feeling, but it's likely you can actually sense and feel a letting go. Allow that to spread across your shoulders and flow down into your arms, through your elbows into your forearms, creating and sensing a letting go in the back of your hands and the palms of your hands, right down to the tips of your fingers and thumbs. And then lift your awareness to the shoulders and the neck. You know, most of us gather a lot of tension here. So it may be difficult to discern a letting go feeling in the neck and shoulders, but pause long enough to imagine it. Then lift your awareness to the space around your ears, and you may be surprised how much letting go you can feel as you relax your scalp. And you'll feel the space around your ears sag or droop as you relax the scalp, even the scalp and the forehead now. Drop that furrow, that worry and concern. You're safe. It's a wonderful time to relax. Relax your face, your eyes, your eyelids, your closed lids, your cheeks, your jaw, your tongue, the grip of your gums on your teeth, your lips. And bring your awareness to the bottom of your nose. And find your space, your place, your spot. where you feel most comfortable and most natural. Gently resting your awareness at the bottom of the nose. And watch your body breathe itself for just a few minutes. Three minutes. Simply watch the in-breath and the out-breath. Any other thought is a distraction. Let it go. Gently bring your awareness back to simply observing your body, breathing itself, all by itself. You are not the breather. You are the observer of the body breathing itself. You are the witness of a life that is moving through you and unfolding before you without effort. Every moment, new again. Lift your awareness from your nose gently to a point in front of your forehead, just a couple of inches in front of the center of your forehead. Imagine a small movie screen and see projected on that screen an image of a beautiful garden or wilderness, whether perfectly landscaped or wonderfully wild. Think of it as a peaceful place, a place of ideal relaxation that you see projected on this mental screen before the brows. Imagine yourself walking into and through this beautiful paradise. And while you allow my voice to go with you, listen for the sounds of birds singing, and the gentle breezes in the tops of the tallest trees. Imagine feeling those gentle, warm breezes blowing across your face and through your hair. Feel the gentle warmth of the sun on your face and your arms. And feel the difference when you find yourself in a cool, shady place. As you walk, feel the earth beneath your feet. Whether barefoot or even if wearing shoes or sandals. Feel the earth supporting you as you walk, as if connected or grounded to the earth. Walk gently, as if with every step, your feet are kissing the earth. And you feel wonderful and free, as if there's nowhere else you'd rather be, and nothing else that demands your time or attention, other than to explore this beautiful place of perfect peace and relaxation. Until you come upon one particular spot which almost takes your breath away. It's so incredibly beautiful, peaceful, and somehow it feels like the place you were headed. Your very special and personal place of ideal relaxation and perfect peace. So you sit down here. Whether in a warm, sunny meadow or a cool, shady, forested place, on a stretch of lonely beach, high in a mountain, deep in a valley, wherever you happen to be. Feel what it is. Feel physically and feel emotionally. Whatever it is that allows you to know that this is your spot. A place you come to connect with the earth and the energy or spirit that illumines and animates you. The vitality, the vivifying energy or force that moves downward and outward from above into the top of your head, filling your body, radiating outward into the world. And yet, as you sit upon the ground, rooted into the earth, experiencing how a tree feels, to be so deeply and securely rooted into the common ground of all that lives. I'd like you to practice visualization for just a few minutes here. And imagine that there's a large white card, as big as a poster board, maybe bigger, 3 feet by 4 feet, roughly. A large white card that is propped up against a tree just a few feet in front of you. And while you gaze at the surface of that white card, I want you to recall how a stop sign looks. A stop sign. And we know it's red. And we know the letters are white. S-T-O-P. Ask yourself silently, how many sides the stop sign has? Count them. Take your time. Is there a white line running around the edge of the stop sign? Ask yourself. See now on that white card a yield sign, traffic sign that says yield. And ask yourself what color that sign is. What is its shape and orientation? What color are the letters? And then visualize, let that go, and visualize in its place a speed limit sign. Notice first its shape, then its background color, the color of the lettering, what it says, and choose a speed limit. Of all the options, choose to see the numbers that occur to you and any letters that you would see on a typical speed limit sign. Now imagine next to you some flowers that you just now are noticing. And carefully, without too much thought, just pluck one of those flowers. Hold it in front of you. And look carefully at the particular flower, even if you have no idea what its name may be. Just look at this flower. Notice in your attempt to visualize this flower a temptation to make an effort, to try, or bring to mind some recollection of flowers in your past. And instead, I'd like you to release that effort, and as passively as possible, allow the image of the flower to come to you. For perhaps this is a flower that you've never seen in your entire life. Let it unfold and reveal itself to you with no effort. Let it come upon you in all of its beauty, all of its majesty. And as you look deeply into it, all of its mystery. Imagine bringing it slowly to your nose and slowly and gently inhaling its fragrance. And then lower the flower and look again deeply. Turn your hand in such a way that you can see the back of the flower. And without judging it in any way, notice the back of the flower. And then the front again. The front that opens and blossoms to the full light of day. The flower willing to reveal its innermost beauty. A flower that seeks to know its source as it reaches for the sun and even follows it across the sky. Standing open and receptive. And wonder at your own inner beauty. And whether you are willing to blossom to open yourself, to stand receptive to the full light of day and all that it has to offer you. And drink in that peace and that beauty and that freedom and that joy without any reservation or concern whatsoever. And imagine with both hands holding that flower gently against your heart. As if harmonizing and connecting in union with the essence of the flowerness, the beauty of this blossom. And wonder if life is really as simple as goodness and truth and beauty. What are we missing when we wall ourselves off from nature, move to the cities, and busy ourselves with the affairs of men? Could life, in its essence, be all goodness, truth, and beauty? A kind of a trinity that will be easy for you to remember: goodness and truth and beauty. Goodness is the Godhead, the source of all. Truth is love, wisdom, happiness. Beauty, the manifestation, the appearance of things, the physical world in its multiplicity and uniqueness. Goodness, truth, and beauty. Bring this sense of peace and harmony with you back to the waking state, and count yourself out in 3 simple steps. 1, simply reorient yourself with an intention to return to the wide awake state and bring this affect of goodness and truth and beauty with you gently. As 2, you feel a gentle rising up, floating up, as when you awaken without an alarm on a lazy weekend morning. And 3, his eyes open, wide awake, back in the room, take a big, slow, deep breath. Hold just a moment as you peak, and then slowly, maybe a little stretch, like when you wake up in the morning. Eyes open, wide awake, back in the room. Feeling fine, feeling better than before. Good. Welcome back. So, practicing visualization is a wonderful skill. It has many practical applications. But even esoterically, or when we choose to develop ourselves spiritually, to have a third eye, so-called, the eye that becomes single and the body is filled with light. The focus or the concentration of the mind's eye really helps the brain to understand, because we tend to think in pictures, don't we? I mean, we speak in words, but we visualize naturally and normally with pictures in our minds. Sometimes we're even aware that we're doing it. You know, you may say to somebody, wait a minute, how's that look? I'm trying to visualize it. There's basically three ways that people organize information, and we all use all three ways, but one tends to predominate. I wonder if you're familiar with this model. In no particular order, the first is to visualize. And people who visualize, when they break eye contact with you, they tend to look up. They'll look up to the left, they'll look up to the right. They may roll their eyes straight up. And they will use predicates and verbs like, it looks to me like, or the way I see it. Sometimes a visual will even begin a sentence with look, which is a kind of a placeholder. It's like or but we're appealing unconsciously to the person or the group that we're talking to draw upon their ability to visualize. Look, if you could see what I see, if you would just look at this, right, and see it this way. And then the second group are the auditory people. This is me. This is my primary representational system, primary rep system, is auditory. When I break eye contact with you and we're sitting face to face, I'm likely to look off to one side or another. And it's because I'm listening to the voices in my head. And I am less likely to begin a sentence with look than with listen. The way I hear it, or it sounds to me like, and we love the sound of our own voice. We love to hear ourselves talk. Listening is a skill that we need to develop, to be a good listener, deep listening. That's a wonderful gift to offer to people. But it can be a little risky and a little scary to listen, especially if you think you have to answer. Something I learned doing talk shows for 40 plus years in Los Angeles. Gosh, my radio career was 54 years, actually, before I hung it up. You don't have to have all the answers. I would do these open conversation talk shows before Rush Limbaugh came along and it all became nasty and political and hateful. Old-fashioned talk shows in the 60s and the 70s were really interesting. People could call and talk about whatever they wanted. And if we disagreed, we did it respectfully and argued respectfully and honorably. And gosh, those were some of my favorite days in radio. But my point is, I didn't feel like I had to be the answer guy. And I taught journalism for a time in college at Mount San Antonio College in Walnut. And it was something that we talked about was the power of the question. Being a reporter, a journalist, you ask questions and you get a certain authority from asking questions. In fact, people in authority do not like to be asked a question because it challenges their authority. The one who questions is the authority, you see. So there's more power in a question quite often than in believing you have to have the answer. So to say, well, I don't know, is a very powerful thing. I don't know. What do you think? Put it right back on. And then, well, it could be this, but, it might be that, and just dig deeply, be as honest as you can about not knowing. That's exceedingly powerful. But to have the question and to be willing to question instead of thinking you have to have all the answers, a very important insight. I know there's anxiety at the end of this class when I go to Q&A. I know you have questions, but many people are nervous about asking the question as if it'll expose the fact that you don't have the answer and you must be some dummy or something. If you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, first thing I'll say is, I don't know. It could be this, seems like it might be that, and I cast about. No shame in that. But I'm getting a little far afield. The 3 rep systems are visual, break eye contact, you look up, looks to me like the way I see it. And the auditory, number 2, they usually say, listen, sounds to me like, or if you could hear it, if you would just listen to what I'm saying and hear me clearly. And then the 3rd rep system is the kinesthetic. The visual tend to be the most active, and their hand movements are up here because, again, they're looking up. That's where everything is. The auditory is a little slower, less exaggerated with their hand movement. And if they do use their hands, it's down here, a little lower. Well, the kinesthetic is the slowest of all. And they have to dig deeply to find their intuition, to find their answers. And when they break eye contact, they look down. And they might say something like, I'm trying to get a handle on this. Or, hey, get a grip, right? They want to feel it. They want to touch it. They want to hold it in their hands. Again, each of us is all 3, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, but the vast majority of people have one rep system, representational system, that predominates. So you may ask yourself, I'm sure you are right now, gosh, am I a visual? Do I look up, talk about what I see, or ask others what they see, or why can't you see what I'm saying? And the auditory that tends to look out to the side, listening for the voices in their head, or the kinesthetic. But all of us think in pictures internally. It's very important to be able to visualize, and it's one of the secrets of meditation. In some schools of meditation, some spiritual and strict religious disciplines, the secret of visualization is, it's just that, it's a secret. It's like held uh, without any mention until a certain stage of development. And now we're going to fill you in on the big power of guided imagery and visualization. We've talked in the past, recently as a matter of fact, about pain control and healing. This is a great use of visualization. In the coming weeks, as I dwell on personal development, and I've got at least 25 tools for you. I checked, made a list. I've got at least 25 tools for you for problem solving, decision making, for pain control and healing, for memory, general stress reduction, dealing with performance anxiety. We'll even talk about reading and study and memory, and how to access your emotions, how to develop intuition to understand why you feel the way you feel. The difference between a physical feeling and an emotional feeling, both of which are felt, or all of which are felt in the body. That's why they're called feelings. In the past, ancient philosophers thought of emotional feelings as being primarily physical. When Plato talked about mind, body, and soul, there's no emotional nature in there. The emotional nature was part of the body, not the mind. It was mental, physical, which is emotional and physical sense and sensation. And then the soul was the spiritual, the awareness, mind, body, and soul. Well, today, the emotional nature is considered a mental attribute. So if you have a physical problem, you go to a medical doctor. But if you have an emotional or mental problem, you go to a mental health specialist. We don't really have emotional health specialists, do we? Psychotherapy, psycho means mind. So we see the emotion as a product of mentality rather than the physical body. In fact, it's a candy mint and a breath mint. The emotional nature is both mental and physical. Emotions have a very, very clear relationship with thoughts for thinking, cognition. Wondering is a good example of a thought and a feeling blended, where the thought will generate the feeling, but the feeling can generate the thoughts. And I've heard, psychiatrists and psychotherapists arguing about which is first. Do thoughts create feelings or feelings create thoughts? Well, both. How about both? It's a back and a forth. Each can yield the other, can promote the other. So a feeling can generate a way of thinking and vice versa. But the beauty of the feeling is that it's both mental and physical. It has a relationship with our thinking, but it's felt in the body. That's why it's in the middle, right? Emotions are in the heart. They're the center between thought and behavior. So in the back and forth between feeling and thought, when you get it together, it should be a clear, specific thought, an energy driven forward by the force. So energy is mentality, force is emotion. The clear ideation, the thought, the visual imagery, sort of our topic for today, the mind's eye, driven forward by the passion or held back by the fear. Emotions, there's an accelerator and a brake in the emotional nature. So it could be oh boy or oh no. But that's the motive. The emotion is the energy in motion. That's the drive. And then the physical body and the world around us is the expression of the thought, the feeling. That's the right order. Lots of our behavior comes out of the emotion without any thought at all. That's called reflexive behavior. But if today's session is about guided imagery and visualization, it plays a role in all of these tools and techniques. We'll learn not only to discern the meaning of your feelings or a set of feelings in the present moment, but also childhood trauma, to go back and take a look at why you still remember that day in the second grade when somebody laughed at you or made fun of you. Of all the memories, why is that stuck? Or your parents fighting, or that divorce, or the alcoholism and drug abuse in your family, why is that still tormenting you? How can you free yourself from the chains that bind us from childhood trauma? There's tools and techniques for that. You don't have to sit with a psychotherapist. Sometimes you do, but more often than not, you need not sit there for 3 years listening to, and then how did you feel? And then how did you feel? And how did that make you feel? And what happened after that? You can apply the tool. Just like you have a hammer and a wrench and a screwdriver and a ratchet and pliers, and you'll learn to use the tools. Again, I got at least 25 of them for you. Yes, Hannah.
I want to give you a friendly prompt that we are just past the noon hour. And I don't see any questions or comments as of yet.
Yeah, let's make an appeal for that. I do like to save at least the last 20 minutes or more for question and answer, even though it's
Meredith just unmuted herself, so perhaps there's something there.
All right.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes. Hi, everyone. Michael, I have a question regarding guided imagery. I've been trying to find some tools, some specific guided imagery tools to do intention-specific meditations. In the past, actually quite a few years ago, I worked with a physician doing medical hypnosis. And I recall that she used specific images to help me, I guess, revisit certain situations in my life. And I know, like with some of your guided imagery, when we do meditations, a lot of times you are having us go into this peaceful location and feeling, the warmth of the sun and grounding with the earth. And I wonder if, on the next podcast, or if there's maybe there's a place that we can find, I don't know, on the internet, where there are specific images to use in order to deal with specific situations, or uncover emotions that may not be identified through particular or regular meditation. I guess, as far as I understand it, the subconscious only understands images and pictures and not words. Is that correct?
I don't know about only, but to a large extent, most certainly. And I think that I would even say the brain really relies on visual imagery, shapes, and that we live in a world of forms and figures and shapes and appearances. And I've read, I don't know, I've not been able to verify it, but I've read from at least one credible source that as much as 85% of brain stimulus is visual, and the other 15% is auditory and kinesthetic and olfactory and gustatory. So the visual is really important. That's a great question. Let me respond to it quickly and then ask you if you have a follow-up. The place of perfect peace is home base in the work that I do. I use it to create a sense of safety as just a starting point. Start here, begin here.
Right.
That creates an alpha brainwave state, sometimes even a deeper theta brainwave state. From there, we use techniques like today I used a white card. I have a very popular old hypnotic technique called the mirror of the mind that I use, where we see ourselves and our desired outcomes reflected in the mirror as if taking a trip forward in time. Sometimes we climb into the mirror like Alice through the looking glass, and the imagination loves this stuff. It just rolls with it. When it comes to imagery, as in healing, for example, or pain control, I feel real strongly, Meredith, about creating and honoring your own reference points. So if I say to you, imagine your heart, for example, you may get an image in your mind's eye right out of Gray's Anatomy. You may get an image that is somewhat cartoonish or something in between. Looks more like a Venn diagram of a heart and heart. My feeling and my experience is that it doesn't really matter. Whatever is your frame of reference, when I say visualize your heart, go with that frame of reference. There's no right or wrong way. If I remember hearing a story from 40 or 50 years ago when I was first studying self-hypnosis and pain control and healing, of a little girl who, I think this was in Silva Mind Control. She was 8 or 10 years old, and we were doing these health readings of other people. And the way we were taught was, if you, in a sense of clairvoyance or remote viewing, sense a heart condition in someone, then you reverse that imagery and send back an image of a perfect heart, however that occurred to you. And the story was a little girl saw a Valentine that was torn. And so all she did was put some Scotch tape on it. And the instructor, I may have heard this from Jose himself, actually. I interviewed Jose Silva on 3 different occasions. He was quite a remarkable man. Maybe that's where I got this story. And he said that little girl was sending healing energy, spiritual healing energy, just as effectively as someone who knew anatomy or who maybe had some surgeon who had actually seen a beating heart in an open rib cage. It doesn't matter. It's all in the intention, and all imagery is symbolic. Even the most accurate imagery is really just a symbol. We're dealing with subtle energies. So I feel strongly about use your own frame of reference. And then I'll add to that very quickly. When it comes to visualizing emotions, here's a challenge. How do you visualize an emotion? I work with color. I ask people, and we'll go into this, I promise you. This is one of the 25 techniques I want to review in coming weeks. You find the feeling that you wish to understand and explore more deeply by, in a closed eye meditation, having already gone to your place of perfect peace. You look down into your body and find where that emotion is located primarily. And then you ask yourself intuitively, if that emotion or set of emotions had a color, what color would it be? Very important to trust your first impression and not judge it or think about it. Then I would say, now without physically moving, just imagine yourself carefully reaching out to touch that colorful feeling for texture or temperature and trusting your first impression. How does it feel to the touch? Well, now we've cross-wired the brain. And so we've given the emotional feeling a physical feeling and a color, and it's much more rich and available to us than this vague emotion that ebbs and flows and comes and goes and spins and dances and wishes to avoid our attention. And I'll develop that more in the future because there's a lot to it and where we go from there. But that's my best short answer to your question. Does that help?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Your own frames of reference, right? Whatever you imagine, that's fine. See, nothing.
Michael, we've got a raised hand and 2 more questions in the chat box.
Good.
The questions in the chat box are pretty simple. Should I just give them to you both at once? They're short and non-philosophical.
Give me one at a time.
One at a time? Okay. The first one up was Dana, and she said, good morning. What was the purpose of visualing the traffic signs?
Just to practice visualizing and notice how imagery in your mind fades and then comes back and dances before you. And it depends on your experience. When I began to visualize, I had a lot of difficulty with it because I expected the imagery in my mind's eye to be as clear and stable as the imagery when my eyes are open, and it's more dreamlike. It tends to ebb and flow and fade and dance, and so signs, like, it could have been anything. I could have said, visualize an apple, make it an orange. Now see the lemon. Now touch the surface of the lemon. Go back to the apple, touch the surface of the apple. Cut the apple in half, look inside. Cut the lemon in half, take a big bite. Oh, you're salivating. Taste that citrusy flavor. There's all different ways of practicing visualization. I just chose the signs because they're familiar to most people.
Cool. Dana, I hope that works for you as an answer. And Melinda is asking, how do you use visualization in everyday activities?
Wonderful question, and we will address this in the tools. One way, for example, I'm trying to be as general as possible here. Anytime you would like to rehearse an activity to perform it more effectively, let's say a phone call with a difficult person, and you have to raise an issue that you would rather avoid. What if you closed your eyes, went into a meditative level, go to your place of perfect peace, and imagine yourself making that telephone call? And then you run it through in your mind, first an ideal version of what you want to say, and then review it again, only this time anticipate the kind of objection you may get, the kind of response you may get, and practice, well, what would I say if the person responds in this way? Well, what would be the best way to handle my response if their response to my initial phone call goes this way? And just rehearse all of these different options in your mind's eye. You can do it very quickly. But again, pull on your intuition and your deeper wisdom. And then when you're ready, maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the exercise, to conclude the exercise, you run the movie in your mind ideally as the best possible outcome. And if it were a really, really important phone call, I might do that once a day or twice a day for 2 or 3 days before I make the phone call. But I've talked to people in business and people in sales about doing this before every phone call they make all day long. And I suggest they just put their hand on the telephone, close their eyes, visualize the person they're talking to, visualize them being attentive and receptive. Imagine yourself being smooth and eloquent and to the point. And I guess what I'm saying is you rehearse life before you do it. That would be one example of a way to use this in your daily life and affairs. I'm getting a lot of background noise. Do you hear that, Hannah?
Yeah, only Larry is unmuted at the moment. I'm gonna mute you for 1 second, Larry, just because I can't resist chiming in with 2 quick comments on what you just said. One is that I think it's safe to assume that the visualization you just described is also really helpful to do in meditation. And the other thing is, did you know that there's a new HBO reality series called The Rehearsal, where participants practice real life scenarios and a bunch of different permutations thereof? So I don't know if anybody finds that interesting, but you reminded me of it.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
And then Larry has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Larry.
In the beginning of in the beginning of today's session, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
In the beginning of today's session, you talked about truth, and something that's been bothering me a lot in recent years is the use of the phrase "my truth." I mean, everybody can have my beliefs or my opinions, but the idea that truth varies by individual bothers me, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's understandable that you would object to truth being used subjectively. If your sense of truth is that it must always be absolute and capitalized. In Eastern philosophy, Buddhism in particular, there is a understanding called the two truth doctrine. And the two truth doctrine is a recognition that there is both an absolute truth and a relative truth. I refer you to my book, Fearless Intelligence, on this. I give an example when we talk about subjectivity as a matter of degree. It could be a lot of things, like fast or slow. What is fast? You know, fast like the speed of light, fast like Tom Cruise, Mach 10 in in Top Gun, fast like a speeding bullet, fast like a rabbit, fast like me walking briskly, which is not so fast. It's relative. It's a matter of degree. The example I give in my book is a matter of degree as in temperature. And I say, my friend Joe from Alaska and my friend Pikello from Hawaii are visiting me in Los Angeles, and it's 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And my friend from Alaska takes off his shirt and loves the balmy weather. My friend from Hawaii wants a sweater, asks if he can borrow a sweater because he's freezing. He doesn't know how we handle this cold weather. So who's telling the truth? Who's true? who's right, who's wrong. This is an example, obviously, of subjective truth in air quotes. 65 is cold to the Hawaiian, 65 is balmy to the Alaskan. But the absolute truth, Larry, is at 65 degrees, right? So that would be one way of dealing with it. And I suspect when somebody talks about their personal truth, that's what they're talking about. And it is subjective, and maybe more precisely, opinion is a better word than truth. It's just a matter of how you view the word semantically. You know, every word has multiple meanings, and they have connotations and denotations, and so it's up to you. I think usually we use words to communicate. So if we understand what they're saying, you may have to ask, you know, by truth, do you mean everybody who has a different truth is wrong and you're right, that kind of truth? Or everybody has their own sense of truth? And if so, is there an absolute that overshadows, right? So that would be my basic response, the two truth. You can even Google that and play around with the responses you get to the two truth doctrine.
Thanks, Michael. And it's just like bouncing around here. There's one more from Jack in the chat box, and it's more of a statement, but I'm not sure if it's a question. So Jack, you might want to expound, but what it says is, my own experience with intuition and visual representation versus others.
I want to expound on that, Jack.
I'm a very visual person with probably auditory, secondary, kinesthetic, far third. And I've noticed when in the past trying to be intuitive, like trying to get the information about something, that I'd get a lot of visual imagery, and it didn't tend to be all that accurate. And what I found to be most accurate was when I'd get more of a felt sense. And I think that because my sort of ego thinking mind is working really more with my visualization, and the felt sense is maybe a little bit more unconscious with me. And so the felt sense would tend to be more accurate, but again, a little harder for me to access. So I'm just throwing that out because I know where visualization is also one of the sort of more detailed ways of getting intuition. So, you know, I'd like that to work better, but
I would suspect, I mean, I'll say it this way. Ideally, we want to have access to all three rep systems. We want to be visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And the information that we seek, the insight and understanding, should be available through all three channels. So if we're weak in one area, and most of us are, we rely on one more than the other two. The idea is to develop the one that does not come so naturally. And maybe the very fact that you're getting more accurate information from the system, the rep system that is least available to you, is a way you're being drawn toward developing that to bring all three into balance. So I think it's a matter of trusting all three and developing, relying on, in your case, the kinesthetic. You know, trust that feeling, even though it may not be as clear as a voice in your head. that whispers very specifically a given sentence or a word or an image in your mind's eye that is so clear and reveals so much. The kinesthetic can be really vague, but as you trust it more, especially if you work psychically with clairvoyance or remote viewing. Someone in our family, a young person in our family, Doreen's side of the family, is a couple that just got pregnant. And they were going to have a reveal party. And so everybody in the family was guessing, is it going to be a boy or is it going to be a girl? And Doreen was real clear. She got girl. I didn't ask her how she knew that, whether it came to her visually, auditorily, or kinesthetically, or two of the three, or all three. But I'll tell you how it came to me was I closed my eyes. I repeated the name of the young woman who's pregnant and her location. I knew where she lived, where they live. And I just thought about the pregnancy. Is this a boy or a girl? I just brought that to mind. And boom, I got a pink rose. Right? It just came to me visually, pink rose. Well, I mean, obviously, that's a girl, right? But that was quickly followed by a feeling that's really difficult to put words to, that reinforced the feminine, you know? And it's difficult putting words to because it wasn't auditory. I did not hear a voice that said, girl, female of the species, or any such thing. But primarily, I just got this pink rose, but then what came up was, I don't know, it's just a lot of happiness and joy about, there's a lot of boys in that family, so I thought it was nice that they were going to get a little girl. I think the kinesthetic does present problems because it can be very, very vague, but as you trust it, you can develop it. Does that help at all? Jack, you still there?
Oh, my mute somehow came on. Yeah, just thanks.
Good, you're welcome. Hannah, is Ignacio with us today? Do you see Ignacio?
I have not seen him by name, and Melinda said he does log on by name, so I don't see him.
Okay.
I have to bounce, so if there's any other questions, maybe you can just raise your hand.
Well, I'm going to close the class here in a minute. I just wanted to finish. And the reason I asked you about Ignacio is we had an email exchange. He's been not only reviewing these classes on YouTube and podcast, he's been posting and retweeting. And he's getting a lot of response by putting links to this class on his own blog and sharing on Facebook and such. And I wanted him to talk about how he does that because it's a way you can support us. I've often asked participants in the live class to subscribe on your favorite podcast player, to subscribe, and this is real important, on YouTube. We're approaching 400 subscribers. When we get to 500 subscribers on YouTube, it will advance us in a big way. YouTube will promote us, so they'll push us higher in keyword searches once we hit 500. Then when we get to 1,000, you go up another click. So subscribing really helps other people to find this class. But beyond subscribing to a podcast and rating and reviewing on Apple or Podchaser, those are two that accept ratings and reviews, that helps. To subscribe on YouTube really helps. And then if you can like and comment, that's important too. All of that, it's not just an ego stroke for me, it really helps. And that may not occur to most people. But then even sharing, if you have a program you really like and you think, God, my friend Sally or my friend Joe really needs to hear this, send them a link. That really helps. Or just a general share on Facebook. Post it on your Facebook page if you really like it. And since we're moving more toward the personal development now than the esoteric, I think we're going to be in a good position to garner more interest. I think there may be more people interested in stress management, problem solving, decision making, goal setting, understanding their emotional feelings than a metaphysical interpretation of Sermon on the Mount or the Eightfold Path of Buddhism or some of the more esoteric stuff we've talked about in the past. And by the way, if you like that, don't worry, we're going to work our way back to it and integrate it along the way. So I've always felt strongly about combining personal development and spiritual development or transpersonal. There's intrapersonal, interpersonal, and transpersonal, which is the non-religious approach to spirituality, the study of consciousness. What makes something spiritual but not religious? The emphasis on consciousness. I don't know if it's ever occurred to many of you, but why do you, when you go to church, never hear them talk about consciousness or awareness? It's baffling. So if somebody says, what do you mean spiritual but not religious? Just say, I'm interested in becoming more aware and more conscious. And I think that's what Jesus and Buddha and Mohammed and the saints and sages and prophets and gurus are all talking about. This is not just ritual, ceremony, and obeying the Ten Commandments. It's not about accepting and obeying so much as modeling ourselves and imitating these teachings, embodying these spiritual teachings so that we can be happier in our lives and more able to support others in the inevitable trials and struggles of living in this world, especially at this crazy time. With that, I'd like you to unmute and say your Salam, farewells, and thank yous. I thank you deeply. Mahalo, Aloha, Salam, Namaste, and we'll see you next week as we do more personal development. So please unmute
See you,
and
Michael.
say bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
Michael. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Have a great week.